Hey, how you doing? It's Johnny Miller from Point Blank Online Music School, back once more to show you some cool little tricks with Ableton Live 8 and sounds and samples from clickproduce.com. Today I'm just playing around with a new sound pack from Push Button Bang called Future Garage, and I really love this sound. This whole kind of post dubstep thing kind of touches on broken beat, touches on techno, and if you're into artists like people like 2562 or Martin, even, you know, with a little bit of texture, you can throw in people like Burial into the equation as well. That kind of sound, if you like that, then this is a good pack for you to get, because it's got loads of cool stuff that you can use to make tunes with that kind of ghostly, kind of haunting edge, but still very much with the kind of swing of garage and UK funky. So inside the pack, we just got obviously the whole thing in Rex file, which is really useful if you use Reason or if you want to cut up the loops really quickly. We've also got the 3 folders of WAB's rhythm loops, which is broken down into rhythm parts and rhythm parts with kicks. So that's quite useful. And I've used a couple of these actually for this particular set, which I'll walk you through in a moment. We've also got obviously one shots in here too, little vocal hits and bass hits, very useful. And some sound loops. One of these I've used a tonal loop here to create a little riff that's going to sit in the background of this little sketch. And for this tutorial, what I'm going to do is use some processing to make this riff my own, and then use some warping to give me some variations on these kicks. So just with a few key component parts, I'm going to start to kind of build up a little track idea and make it my own, which is really important when you're using these samples. So let's have a look at what I've got, and I've just got this tonal loop here, and this is really nice. What I've done so far is just use clip envelopes to just take out the beginning of each bar. There's a little hit at the beginning of the bar which I didn't really like, so I've taken that out. Now I want to add some effects to this to kind of make the overall effect of this riff a lot stronger, because at the moment it feels quite kind of meek and quiet and a little bit too subtle. It's got lots of stereo effects on it as well, and I'm going to show you how you can get rid of that and kind of create your own stereo effects. First thing I'm going to do is overcompress it. If you're into this whole kind of future garage, post dubstep sound, then this is definitely a trick that you should put into practice a lot on well, in this case a riff, but it could be a vocal or some ambience or something. I've loaded up Live's default compressor. I'm going to take the ratio right up to infinity, and then the threshold I'm going to bring that right down. So what's happening now is the compressor's bringing out all the quiet kind of nuances of that loop by applying gain reduction to the louder parts. Now from here I'm going to add a limiter, because I'm getting some little spikes on the output. So the limiter's just going to cap that. I'm going to bring the ceiling up to 0 dB. And now I can even get a bit more gain out of this loop. Now there's quite a lot of stereo on this loop, and for me it's a little bit skittish. So I'm going to go to Utility and put in a mono patch there. And that's just turned the loop essentially into a mono signal. Does what it says on the tin really. And then to add some colour, I'm going to put in Chorus Slow Pan. That's going to give me a little bit of colour and subtle movement. Now if I want to, I can add some delay, just make it quite subtle. And also I think just generally there seems to be something lacking in the middle in this loop. When I say the middle, I'm talking about the frequency range. I'm going to put EQ8 in. I'll put it here, in between the utility and chorus. Now I'm just going to bring out a little bit of these mids, around 1 or 2K. There we go. The other thing I've done to this loop as well is I've just transposed it by a couple of semitones. This is actually the original pitch. And inside the clip as well, I've put into practice the transient loop mode. And I did a tutorial on this a few weeks back if you reference back on the videos that I've done over the past few months, the transient loop mode, I've set that to the transient loop mode to off, which is essentially play stop. And I've turned down the transient decay value to 57, so it creates a kind of stuttered, sort of gated effect. It's an effect I put into practice on almost all my tunes. I love it. So now I've got that real kind of strong sort of Detroit techno kind of edge to this. Let's bring in the percussion loop. And this is just some top end stuff. And it's actually a much longer loop, the original audio from the Future Garage sound pack. But as you can see, I've just homed in on a couple of beats, and I've used the start marker here just to move around the start point of the loop. And that results in this hit here being on beat 2 and beat 4 of the bar. And that's quite a useful little function, to take a percussion loop and just shift around where the start point is, so you get a slightly different flavor to the rhythm, especially when it's working with your other beats. So let's bring in the kicks now. These are quite nice, kind of warm, slightly distorted kicks. Now what I want to do here is create some variation, because if I just leave this beat running throughout the whole track, it's going to get a bit repetitive. So I'm just going to click on the clip, the orange clip here, the kicks clip, and just hit Command D. That's going to give me a duplicate. I'm going to go in here now, double click onto this second clip, and I'm just going to set up some warp markers, just shift some of these notes around, some of these kicks. I want to move this one. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to place a warp marker at the beginning of the next kick and on that second kick, so I can now move that around within the bar. So let's play this second one now. This is the variation. And a good tip here, if you're doing this, if I solo this kick, you might hear some stretching effects going on at the end of this first kick. A good tip now is to take the transient loop mode and switch it to off, because that will kind of take away that stretch effect and just play the kick. If I undo, listen to the difference. Can you hear that kick's like extended now? It's almost got this looping flavor because the transient loop mode is set to play reverse. So I'm going to set that to off, which is essentially play and stop. And it mutes that kick. Just means we can do more stretching. And not hear necessarily the effect, especially here where I've stretched that kick quite a lot. If I put the transient loop mode back to loop reverse, you can hear the stretching effect. Now you might like that. If that's the case, great, leave it in this particular setting. But I want to keep those kicks quite muted, so I'm going to have them. I'm going to switch that to off. So now I've got a variation. I've got 2 kick loops to work with. So I'm just going to name that variation, give it a slightly different color. There we go. And it's nice to be able to have that, you know, in your productions when you're working with these loops. Subtle variations make all the difference. The listener won't necessarily notice that they're there, but it just gives your track a little bit of movement. So maybe at the end of 8 bars, at the end of a set of 8 bars, I'll play this red clip, or the end of 16 bars maybe. So there's that subtle change in the kick patterns. Okay, you can learn loads of cool stuff like this at pointblankonline.net, and I'll be back again next week to show you some cool little tricks with Live 8 and sounds and samples from clickproduce.com. Peace.